Good morning, everyone, and welcome to another author interview here on Tales from the Wandering Scribe. I'm your host, Gabriel Garcia, otherwise known as the Wandering Quill and the Wandering Scribe. And joining us today is another first timer here on the show. Now, my guest today is an Irish fantasy writer specializing in dark, atmospheric storytelling infused with ancient history, Gothic themes, and Viking undertones. She is the author of the Tempus Militibus series, a gripping blend of supernatural intrigue, deadly secrets, and the weight of history on immortal souls. A lifelong adventurer and observer, my guest finds inspiration in shadowed alleyways, old bookshops, and the forgotten whispers of the past. Her writing reflects a deep fascination with lost civilizations, the tension between duty and desire, and characters who walk the fine line between darkness and redemption. When she's not crafting intricate narratives, she enjoys gothic rock, a glass of Pinot Grigio, and exploring the world, always with a notebook in hand, ready to capture the next tale waiting in the shadows. So, let's give a huge round of applause to today's guest, author A.D. McCabe. Anna, thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Thank you, Gabriel, for having me. It's a pleasure.
Awesome. So before we dive into your series, is there anything else you'd like to share with our viewers and listeners?
No, it's just this series. It's 11 books in total, and the next one it's called Tempus Militibus. It's due to hit the bookshelves on the 21st of March. So all excitement right now.
Nice, very nice. Now, for those who are just learning about your series right now, what can you give us as a brief teaser into the world you have created in your stories?
Okay, the Tempus Militibus, they're Vikings, but they're Vikings that have a code. There's a brotherhood with. They come from the sixth dimension, and they're not your average bloodsuckers. And without giving away too much, these guys particularly are in the fourth dimension, the LA fourth they call it, and they solve crimes against that the dregs in that community commit against the mortals. And they're bad guys in general. In some cases, they have tremendous senses of humor. Their philosopher that deals with them, he's actually such a bumbling fool that we all love him. His name is Demas.
Nice. Very, very nice. It's actually really, really interesting concept with like Vikings being from like a different dimension. And I also like to ask, do you have any covers or books of a few in your series?
Yes, I do. This one is Bjorn, Tempest Fugit. That was the second one that was published. This one, Tempest Militibus, that's the first one. And then there's this one, Tempest Venus, which is Lanny's story. Those ones are already published. And the next one in the series, like I say, is Tempest Vivive, Lucas' story, and that's coming out on the 21st.
Nice. Very, very nice. So now let's talk a little bit more about you, Anna. So from your bio, you are wrapped into the realm of fantasy, gothic lore,
Yeah.
history, lost civilizations, the works. I absolutely love that. So, how did that come about, this fascination for the past and the unknown? Were you always this enthusiastic about, stories like these, or did this come about later in life?
Well, I've always been fascinated by Gothic literature. Um, I remember my grandfather, he was a terrible censor of books. I came across a copy of The Monk by Matthew Lewis, and I had to read that one in secret because my granddad, he would get a scissors or he would get a blackout marker, and literally go over the book and cut out words that were unsuitable. So when I first read The Monk, I just got a small gist of what the book was about, and it fascinated me. The whole gothic, atmosphere and that, plus the supernatural elements that are in it as well. And then, obviously, I spent some years in Sweden during the summertime,
Mm,
and I became fascinated. Like they've got a fantastic Gothic culture in Scandinavia anyway, from the music to the people to the architecture and everything. So that was always a fascination there as well. But also my love of ancient Greece and Rome and, Latin and that. I thought, wow, it's so rich culturally. And then as a young person going to Rome for the first time, one of the first images that I have in my mind was standing before the School of Athens and seeing that just down in the bottom right hand corner, Raphael looking out with that kind of smirk on his face, like, I'm here in among you ancients, and I'm here. You can't ignore me. And it's just, that whole interest in the ancients and Gothic and music and all of that. I thought, well, wouldn't it be great to write a story about that? You know, write a story that has never been written. Like, vampires, they have such bad press. You know, everybody's there, oh, vampires, they're bloodsuckers, they're going to suck the life out of you. I'm thinking, well, no, they're not, don't have to be. What if they're the good guys? And what if they're
that,
just themselves?
that is
And that's
very true.
Yeah, and that's how the same with the Vikings. Everybody they've got bad press too for being marauders, for being pirates. They're just a wee bit misunderstood. So that's where that has come. It's just pure fascination, personal interest, and that's when the Tempus Militibus was born.
Okay. So now let's jump forward ahead into your history. So, what would you consider the definitive aha moment in the sense that you wanted to go down the path of being an author and begin writing the Tempest series?
Oh gosh. Well, I've always written as a child. I've always done journals and stuff. And my mom and dad, they had to sit through some sessions where I would write something and they would be there, forced to be sat around. Okay, Anna's coming out and she's going to read her latest creation. They were terribly, terribly supportive, I have to say, and that was fantastic, And my little journals, they suddenly began to grow and grow. And then um, my first book was published in 2007, which dealt with the whole glam metal series, glam metal, hair metal of the LA scene back in the 80s. And really, I suppose because of my interest in music, um, it was very difficult because I was so invested in that story, in that series, that I wrote another one. It was kind of based on fantasy and mythology, but it was on Irish mythology and the Tuatha De Danann, which were the Irish fairy folk,
Mhm.
And again, that was my first kind of intro into the fantasy realm. And one of the things I found about them was how a wee bit like a computer, there are rules, but you can break them and you can add to them, and you're not constrained by conventionality like what one would be with, say, contemporary fiction. You could just go along, and with fantasy, sky's the limit. Your imagination is all that's going to stop you from writing. Of course, you have to do a believable story at the same time as well. But that was what led me down the kind of the aha moment that
Mhm.
led me down to writing the Tempus Militibus series. But again, with that series was only ever going to be 4 books. I only had, I suppose you say enough kind of juice in the tank for the 4 books kind of thing. But I was out walking in a local park, and then I thought, well, why stop at just that? Because you can't wrap a series up in 4 books if you've got more than 1 or 2 characters. And in this case, there was 5 characters within the book. And then there's the whole world building that one didn't get to do terribly well in the first books because you're based in the fourth dimension. So then it was on that walk, you know, another character sprang to mind, and another, and another. So the book went from 3 to 4 books to 11 books, and possibly a spin-off series that I'm actually conceptualizing at the moment. But like that, the pandemic happened, and I was working in childcare at the time, and the childcare facility closed down because of COVID and our lockdowns. So like that, there was only so much walls that you can paint, and I sat down then and I started to write what went on to be the last book in the series. I wrote
Wow.
that one. And then, so with Pio's story, he's one of the characters. That book was written first, which is the last in the first of the books, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. That is really, really incredible. And I actually touched on something that we will talk about later in the interview, which is, of course, writers and the pandemic and quarantine and lockdown, because, that was a huge moment for all of us. But I'll say that for, when we get to the business side of being an author, because it's a nice transition. So now let's actually talk about the book itself, or rather the series itself. So when you began writing the first book in the Tempest series, what were the goals you had for yourself as the author, as well as the promises you are making to your prospective readers?
Yeah. When I actually sat down and wrote the book, I'm an avid reader. I will read anything as long as it's good, and there was nothing there within the whole kind of gothic horror, dark academia side of things that would appeal to me, and I thought, well, there's nothing there. I'm nothing to read. What am I going to do? So I sat down. I thought, right, I'm going to write these guys. I was in a cafe literally before the country closed down, and there's this